Welcome, everybody. All right. So we need to start working on... I need to take these headphones off before I'm just like straight yelling at people. All right, so I think... Welcome to the infinite void. That one was a little annoying. All right. Hiya! pull STB in here. We want probably STB true type, image right, image resize, and image. Probably easy font. And that's about it. Now let's refresh this. And then we include. Okay. So for our image, we're going to be caching the data. Not a texture, sorry. I don't know why that keeps going over there. Yeah, it pops up over here. It is so annoying. Okay, so now I made sure that we're all right. Probably do both of these. William. We'll update this guy here. We need to import our path, import GUID. up to these two functions. That's probably correct. My dumbass forgot to include it. Update this guy. All right. Now we should be good to go. Okay. So we got looking good. All right. I think I'm gonna end the stream for now. I got the little bit that I wanted to get done. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I need to do a material asset set, a material resource. Once the material resource is done, then ooh, hey. Yeah, well, you know what? I could probably I could probably stick around for a little bit longer if you guys want. Ooh, this. I'll stick around for a little bit longer. I don't want to. So I am designing my very own custom C++ game engine. It's pretty neat. I've done a lot of things to it so far, as you can see. So currently, what I'm doing is I am essentially trying to create my own asset types for assets that are going to end up in the engine. So, for instance, I created my own file type for meshes. So when I export them from Blender, then they um, get put in my own file format that I created, and then this essentially goes through, loads all of that data, and then creates a .asset file based on that thing. So when you drag in a mesh file that the engine supports, it will essentially rip out the stuff that it doesn't need and then stores everything into the .asset file. Well, so it was part of the fun, yes, but the other half of this is that if you're not using my file format, so let's say that you use OBJ or FBX, right? I wanted to create a file format that supported all of the things that I needed, right? So OBJ doesn't support animations. I wanted a file format that supported everything that my engine would need. And so if you are working with my engine, then you can use that file format and you know that that file format is just going to work, right? I did create an exporter for Blender, yes, and an importer. Actually, I can show it to you if you want to see it. So the other thing that's pretty neat about my the other thing that's pretty neat about my stuff here, I'll show you, is that not only when I import these, not only does the mesh data come through, so you see that this is the mesh data, but it also brings in the texture data as well. So all of the textures are actually stored in the mesh file as well as all the material properties. So you can see that my model, which was in my format, Affinity Mesh, came in with all of its. So if I click on it, you can see it came in with all of its materials, right, and their names, as well as the images as well. So the idea is that I wanted it to make it really easy for the designers, the people that are going to be working on my game that aren't programmers, to basically just design everything in Blender, export it into my custom format, and then it just imports and works immediately as soon as they get it in. So they drag it in, all of that's created, and then they don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to work because it's my format. It's made to work with my format. But if we say download something off of the internet, then it's like an FBX or an OBJ. You can either take it into Blender and convert it into my format, or I'm going to be using a simp. And so this is the other reason why I'm doing things this way. Right now, it only supports my Affinity Mesh, but eventually what I'll do is I'll use a simp to look at the file formats here, right? And if it's a different file format than Affinity Mesh, then it will compile everything down into my asset format. That way the engine, when it goes to load things, always loads it the same way. So instead of having to waste time and processing on figuring out what file format it is, what loader I need to load so that it can load, it doesn't need to do all that because my asset files cache all of that data in them. That way, no matter what format you're using, it ultimately ends up in a format that the engine is able to just quickly load and use. And so that was the idea behind not only, you know, the asset files, but also the custom file format as well. So the idea was, you know, uh provide a importer and exporter. So my exporter does work as well. Export Affinity Mesh. So the engine is sort of automatically translating into your format. No, you're absolutely correct. So there's two formats. There's the .asset format, which is the format that the engine understands. Um, there's also the Affinity Mesh format, which is what is a bridge between Blender and my engine, if that makes sense. So you have two formats. But you're correct, where the second format, the .asset format, the engine will automatically translate any mesh file into that format. That way, it's always consistent, and so it's pretty neat. I'll show you. They're similar to my Affinity Mesh. So they're just JSON files. So they look similar to this, where you'll have the meshes in the file, the name of the mesh, what material it's using, and then a list of vertices, right? And then it's not only is it have the vertices, it has the UVs as well. And I just updated it so it'll also export the normals. So if you change the normals, it'll actually so if you change the normals will come over as well. It also stores all the indices and the material and vertices as well. So it's the neat thing is I don't waste any space. So the materials all end up at the bottom of the file and they're referenced. So if you have multiple meshes using the same material, that material doesn't end up in the file multiple times. It's just one time, and they reference to that material section, which is here. And then your colors, and then the image data is actually translated into base 64 and stored within the file itself. Is this engine ultimately for PC? So my initial is going to be Windows, Mac, Linux, and then WebGL, so that it'll export and be playable on the web. And then from there, I'm going to be working on getting it working on mobile phones. And then, if all goes well, hopefully I'll be able to get SDKs and the development engines or the development SDKs for the consoles as well. But I don't really have that's kind of further into the future. I get sketched out whenever my meshes get translated from one format into another. Never know if my mapping is going to come across correctly. If my numbers, well, so the way that I'm doing it is very similar to the way Unreal Engine does it. So Unreal Engine creates a .u asset file, which caches all the data. It's very similar to what I'm doing. They have their own they have their own binary format that they use. I'm not doing that. I'm doing it with JSON because it's easier for me to read. It's easier for everybody else to read. And in my opinion, it's way easier to understand if something happens in source control where these files get updated. And with Unreal, their binary system, you're reading like a bunch of binary. You don't know what it is, what it's doing. With me storing it in a JSON format, you can see if something gets screwed up, if there's a conflict or whatever, that it's readable, and you're able to resolve that instead of having to roll that file back, remake those changes in your art program, that sort of thing. I'm trying to make my engine as easy as possible for everyone working with it, so that not only is it a great solo experience, it's also a great collaborative experience. And so that's a large part why I chose JSON for that is a large part why I chose JSON for the file format. And again, translating all of your meshes down into my asset format will also make it much easier to read and understand if something happens. And I've done a lot of research and a lot of testing into models and making sure that all of your edges, all of your vertice placements, all the UVs, all of the normals, all of that stuff comes through in my format properly into the engine. And so now I'm actually working on creating those asset files, loading those asset files, and then I can package all of those asset files, since it's just JSON, right? I can package all of those into one big file, and then the engine can just read from that file, and it can keep that open. So when it needs to, read something new, it doesn't have to reopen that file. It just has it all stored. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have a large part of this working. I'm actually working on my editor right now, which is why I'm working on this whole asset stuff, because I'm working on getting this stuff put into a level editor so that I can create levels and start placing things. What? Oh, this is because it's the engine. Here's the editor. Because I have this stuff in there. And then so this is pretty neat. I'm using mGUI. And so what's really nice about using mGUI is right, the windows are in here, but I can also drag them off or dock them to any side as well. And then they dock it there. Or I can make it small, and now these two will move independently. And I've also done a lot of work into abstraction as well. I'm streaming on both Abstract Oni. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for watching. By the way, everybody who's watching, feel free to follow if you want to see more. My new schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I'll be streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm going to try and do that on the weekends as well. So would you say this is similar to a Homebrew Unity or Godot, or is it a little more pared down from that spec? Eventually, I want to get it to that point. Right now, it's kind of pared down. Like I said, I've done a lot of work into abstraction, so you can use whatever rendering system you want. So right now, I have it using OpenGL. So OpenGL runs like all of this stuff. And then if you wanted to load, say, DirectX, I don't have the DirectX version of it written yet. I have the OpenGL version written. But if you wanted to run DirectX, it would be as simple as changing this from OpenGL to DirectX, or the same with Vulkan. And then the neat thing is that all of that code doesn't end up in your finished product, making your executable bigger. Basically, if you want to have if your game uses DirectX and that's all it's going to use, then you only have to ship the DirectX DLL along with your game, and then the OpenGL and the Vulkan code never ends up in there, so that it keeps your executable size as small as possible. And then for instance, if you wanted to use SDL instead of GLFW for your window framework, you could do that too, right? Like I just created a wrapper around GLFW, and then this is loaded dynamically in my platform. So I just load these DLLs, right? And then from there, they're just an abstraction. So it's, all of this stuff. So you need to make sure that all of these exist on your abstraction, and then you can actually so that all of these will, when the engine calls to these functions, they work. But yeah, so I mean, we are in the terabytes now, but I mean, you also have to remember that I want to ship to the web, and I also want to ship to mobile devices and stuff like that. So I'm trying to keep the engine pared down in terms of size as much as possible, and so that as much is abstracted out into DLLs as possible. That way, things load fast in the mobile environment, but things also load fast in the web environment as well. Um, and I mean, at the end of the day, also on the PC, right? If we have a smaller size, the things load, quicker on the PC as well. So I put a lot of kind of thought and energy into how can I make this as modular as possible so that it fits as many people as possible, but also not increasing the size of the executable itself to support that. And the way that I came up with doing that was dynamically loading these DLLs and then creating abstractions that the engine calls out to. Back when we released our game for WiiWare, you actually made more money sooner if you kept your game size smaller. See, that's one of the things too, right? Is that I want to make sure that I'm keeping, this is kind of as small as possible, so that if you want to, release to those platforms, then, I mean, everything is downloaded these days, but I bought the PS5, the discless version, because I didn't have the money for the version with the disc, right? But even if you have a disc, then I mean, even if you had a disc, right? That's still that disc these days is just installed to your console. And so there's only so much space. And so I basically have Spider-Man, Final Fantasy 16, the New Horizon Forbidden West game, and one other. And that's all I can fit on my PlayStation 5. That's it. And that feels really bad. It really is. It really is. But eventually, when I release my engine to be able to create games for those platforms, they won't take as much size on your hard drive. So you can have a couple of my games on there versus one, or versus another one, which you get one game, or you can get 3 or 4 of mine on there, because I was conscious about file sizes. And that's partially, again, when I talked about this, is like my material data is not replicated. So if you looked at somebody else's, they probably didn't think about this, where my meshes call out to their material, and then it goes down here and references that material, versus just putting this material data in there. So if you have multiple meshes using the same material, which is great for performance, right? Because then it only needs to load that material one time, and then you can batch those vertices together, and stuff like that. But instead of increasing the file size, I made sure that it's just referencing those sections rather than duplicating those sections, and that also keeps the file size small. It was, like I said, it was just all of that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I do care about it, honestly. As a game developer that does actually use Unreal, as well, um, you can see my discs are getting there. They're getting there. I have a lot of space, right? It's a 2, 4, 6, 7 terabytes in my computer, and I'm pushing that storage, um, and a lot of that is, most of it is game development stuff. Um, it is, and I'm pushing it though, right? And because I have all this stuff, and so I don't think the engines really care too much about space. That's another large part of the reason why I'm doing these asset files, is because there's a lot of stuff in file formats that my engine's just not going to care about. It doesn't need that stuff to do what it does, right? It doesn't need like the version of the file. Why do I care that it was created with FBX version 6? I don't care. Beyond the initial, beyond the initial load of that file, I don't give a shit about that information. That's bytes that don't need to be there. And so I strip all of that out and put them into a much more condensed dot asset file that will actually, keep the sizes smaller, but also have all the information that the engine needs to replicate that inside of the engine from your art program. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I do a lot of development. I actually at one point was working on a GBA game, so I also kind of understand the file size limitations from that as well. So the NES development stuff. Assembly is super super freaking cool. That's something I want to learn. They have, yeah. There's a really good C++ one that you can use that we used, and I actually had it like I bought a cart loader that will load blank carts with your game, and I was able to put it into my actual Game Boy Advance and like play my game. It was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. Because as a kid, you always dreamed about having your own game on there. You know what I mean? Taking my Game Boy out, and my parents are like at the DMV or something, and I'm like, just playing it, and then I'm like, oh my god, how cool would it be to have my, the game idea that I have in my head run on this thing, and then you grow up and then actually do that. Super freaking cool. I can't code it all. The other guy does the assembly. I mean, regardless, I mean, you're still making games, man. Every role is as important as the other one. I do a lot of my own stuff. So I'm kind of one man band most of the time. My business partner is more operations side of things. Um, so I'm usually left to do like a bit of the art and stuff like that. Um, this is some of the stuff I've been working on for um, this the I'm working on kind of two games right now. This one is a like a pixel art side scrolling platform adventure game, um where your character like aims at the mouse when you shoot. Um that's the PNG version. Uh so I actually like layered it out so you can so all the pieces kind of like fit together, and then I can put them together in the engine, and then these will hinge here. Um, and then they'll kind of just aim at the mouse, rotate to aim at the mouse, um, and stuff like that. So I I end up kind of one man banding it, where I do I can do the 3D, I can do the 2D stuff, um, and then my business partner kind of handles operation stuff. But like I said, it you know everything is important. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, I kind of I kind of started with like this like blobby character where each limb was a different color, and that really helped me kind of hone in on the look that I wanted. Um, and I used like a lighting library. This one's in Game Maker. I use the lighting library to kind of like make everything dark, because when you first get there, it's going to be like all horror. When you first get there, you'll only have your helmet light, which will be short range, and then you'll eventually you'll get a pistol that has a light on it that also like kind of illuminates. But when you first get there, everything is dark, so it's going to look kind of like really dark and atmospheric. Um, And so the only lights that you see are the light from the helmet here, this little light, and then the flashlight from your the flashlight from your gun. This one will be shorter, and you'll have a pistol. Like when you first get there, you pick a pistol up from a guard. But yeah, so this one is just little side-scrolling platformer. But yeah, that's my two projects. I hope you guys liked what you saw. I've been working hard on this stuff, especially this engine. This engine has been a work of passion for me. I've wanted to make my own engine for a long, long time. I mean, I've done it 100 times. I've had my own engines in the past. Um, all that kind of stuff. But this one is different because I'm putting a ton of thought into size and all that stuff. I probably about a year ago. I seem to remember your username from about a year ago. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna head off. Thank you so much for the raid. Um, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out. I super appreciate it. I got to be up tomorrow to watch my children. I have two of them, and they're crazy, so um, I have to be awake and alert for that. Um, Architect and custom engine over Unity, exactly. So I've been, working on this, and like I said, I'm super excited about it. Um, uh, we're getting there. Like I said, we just got the mesh. We just did texturing. To well, I might work on stuff tomorrow. Depends on if my kids let me or not. We'll be doing materials, and then we're gonna be doing our level editor from there. So that should be super exciting. So if you guys like what you see, please hit the follow button. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Keep rocking. Peace, peace.